Geoff has worked as a physics teacher, a teacher trainer, and as a learning development manager. He has written How to Be Better at Creativity, and his work has been translated into 8 languages. His website has lots of downloads on it and gets visited about 2,000 times a week. His new book, Evidence-Based Teaching, which Keith showed on screen, is written for practicing teachers and was published to critical acclaim from academia and from practicing teachers. So without further ado, Geoff, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you to spend some time looking at the most important thing that goes on in a college, which obviously is teaching and learning. What I'd like to do today is to share with you the outcomes of some research on which teaching methods work best. It's only quite recent that this research has become available to us, and they've very rigorously, I say they, mainly academics, have very rigorously tested a whole series of teaching methods. There are 600,000 experiments like the one I'm about to describe, so there's a phenomenal amount of sort of trialling of different teaching methods. But some teaching methods have been found to work in every subject, at every academic level. You've obviously got to adapt them for different subjects and different levels, but they work to the degree that they'll actually almost double the rate at which students learn certain teaching methods. There's very, very few with that power, but we know which ones they are. And I'm just going to share, I've only got an hour, so obviously you can only look at a few of them. I'm going to look at some teaching methods that can be adapted to any teaching situation, I hope, and try and encourage you to experiment with those methods, try them out, and talk with others about those experiments too. They've found that you won't necessarily, when you start a new teaching method, it may go perfectly straight away, but it probably won't. Your students won't be used to it, neither will you. So it's best to start off using it in a small way and do it repeatedly and think about it each time and think how to do a better job next time. And it really helps you enormously if you can do that with somebody else. If you lead a teaching team, you may know about communities of practice, which you've already got in this college, which I'm very encouraged to hear. But there's lots of stuff on my website about supported experiments, which is what I call these things. And it's the prime method for improving teaching. So if you're a leader of a teaching team or you're a manager, do please look at that stuff. Unsupported experiments in my website or in my books, and try and get your team involved in that. But let's go back to have a look at how we test teaching methods. Let's imagine that somebody, a researcher, wanted to know whether students would learn better if they wrote their own notes than if they were given a set of expertly written notes. Okay? What they would do would be, and there's hundreds of thousands of experiments like this that have been summarised and so on. But I'll just describe one. Yeah? And about this note making. What the researcher would do would be they could get agreement from a college to get involved in this, and they would use a teacher who was experienced and had good results. And I'm going to imagine that I'm a teacher, and I'm going to imagine that you are my students in a given year. Okay? The researcher then splits you into two. One group is the control group, and you're there for purposes of comparison, and I teach you my normal way. The other group is the experimental group, and I teach you in exactly the same way as the control group, but with one difference. You're going to make notes yourselves, you're going to get notes from me, and that's the only difference between the two groups. Everything else, all the homeworks, all the DVDs I show you, all the explanations I give, will be identical to both groups. Your membership of group is determined randomly, so you're randomly assigned to this group or that group. That means there's just as many dyslexic students in this group as there are in that, and any other factor you care to mention, it's roughly equally sorted out in the two groups. In any case, we're not relying on this one experiment. Experiments are repeated and repeated and repeated, and then the results of them are averaged. So we're pretty sure that by the time you're averaging 1,000 experiments, and you're randomly assigning students to these two groups, that there's no real difference between the groups. Any difference in students' achievement is due to the difference in the teaching of the two groups. So, with this group, I do my normal stuff. And let's say the researcher asks me, what do you normally do with notes? And let's say, well, normally I teach a topic, then I give them my handout. I've been teaching 15 years. I know what they need to know. I've written it very carefully, precisely, and every year I revise and improve my note. So I've now got it to a fine art. I've got this very succinct, very precise handout, and I give everybody a copy of it, and I talk over this, each of the subheadings in the handout, with the group, and I ask if they have any questions and so on. And the researcher says, great, well, you're a good teacher, you get good results with your control, with the control group, you'll just carry on doing exactly as now. But with this group, I want you to teach them exactly the same as the other group, but the experimental group, they're going to write that own notes. And so he teaches me, the researcher, I'm the teacher, and the researcher will teach me a certain way of getting you to write your own notes. And let's say it's like this. When I'm about, I don't use, you might not do notes making all the time. I'm just using certain judgment on my part as to whether or not you're capable or so on. So I'll give you a warning in advance. So I say to you, okay, I'm about to teach you the blur. It's going to take about 10 minutes. I'm not finish, you're writing your own notes. For me, you're writing your own, okay? So I'll warn you in advance. Then I teach for, well, that's a judgment. It might be 10 minutes, it might be 15 for a very good group, it might be 5 for a less able group. I've got to judge how much teaching you're able to absorb and then write it somebody else. But I teach for however long it seems appropriate, and then I shut up and I say to you, off you go, please write notes. While I was teaching you, I probably put keywords up on the board. I might actually put subheadings down for the topic I'm teaching you as well, so that you compartmentalise your note and make sure that you write a little bit about everything that I think is important. So there'll be a few things on the board to help you perhaps. But then you write your own notes, and I'm now shut up, but you write your own notes in a particular way. I ask you to leave a margin down the right-hand side, and gaps between the paragraphs. And the purpose of that is that you'll be improving these notes as we go on. You need to be really good at space in order to do that. Once you've written your own notes, and I shut up entirely while you're doing that. I don't wander around saying, oh, don't forget to mention this, don't forget to mention that. But once you've finished writing your notes, you get together in pairs, and you look at each other's notes, and you make suggestions for improvement. So let's say I'm a student and I'm head of you say, well, you can't mention so-and-so. I think, oh, yeah, you're right, I really want to add that. So I add an improvement. It wouldn't be in a different colour, I'm just showing it's in a different colour so you can see what's going on. Perhaps together we think, well, we haven't really explained this, this second subtopic very well. Perhaps we ought to, mention so-and-so as well. We think that's important too. So my notes are gradually improved through this process of the pair checking. Once the pair checking is done, the teacher then goes over the key sort of parts of this topic that the students have just written their note on. Maybe there's 3 subheadings, say. And I say, okay, let's imagine these two tables here in my class. I say, okay, who would like to tell me what they've written under that first subheading? Okay. And perhaps you give me, read out what you've written. And then I say, thank you. I don't say, well done, that's perfect, or no, I just say, thank you. Anybody think anything should be added to that? Anybody think there's something wrong in what she suggested? Get some other suggestions to add things. And of course, while you say you, or listening to this discussion, you think, oh, well, I've got what she said. And then somebody else says, oh, but we also need to mention so-and-so. You haven't got so-and-so. So you say, whoops, I haven't got that. I better just add that to my note there as well, because I didn't have that. So while everybody's listening to the teacher checking, they're adding things onto their notes as well. So there's 2 sort of opportunities to improve the notes, once when there's a pair check and once when the teacher's checking. If I say, what have you written under the second topic, and I just give a couple of things and it's not very good, I might say, well, have you mentioned such and such? Have you mentioned so-and-so? Nobody says, no. So I say, well, mention it now, it's really important. Do you know if I said such and such? No, I said that. So you add those bits in and so on. And maybe you find that you've written something that's wrong. So you just got it out, and you write it right. So now you've got, the experimental group got, this corrected set of course, and you lot have got a perfect set of notes written by an expert, very concise, very precise, and so on. Yeah? So the researcher now wants to know whether you lot learned more or less than you lot. And so when I do it, and the researcher says, well, you're really quite good in this class now, you're getting to write notes in a really effective way, you're not giving too long to do it, not too short. I think they're getting the hang of it too. I'll be looking at their notes and they're pretty much as good as they're going to get. So let's do a trial. And what will happen now is we'll set, say, a week's teaching or 2 weeks teaching or something like that. I'll teach the same topic to both groups, and then the researcher will set you a test. In that topic. And so that's what happens. And when I remark the test, so we're all having exactly the same teaching experience, learning experience, except for note-making versus professionally written notes. And here's the marks in the test that you've just done, just a little test for the week or 2 weeks' work where you were being taught in these sort of two different sort of ways. 50% of the test, 100% of the test. Up here, the number of students with a mark, say between 40 and 45, or 45 and 50, or 50 and 55. And most students are getting the average mark. Some students doing really well, some students doing really badly, and that's the control group. The black line there is the good control group. Now that's a good teacher who gets good results teaching their normal way. And then, of course, we see how you looked up. And if we did this experiment properly, if we really did it for real, we would find out. We'd find that you lot would learn a hell of a lot more and would do a hell of a lot better in the test. So there's the blue line, this is the experimental group. And this distance travelled of the average mark has been shifted over. Notice the most able students have improved, and the least able students have improved as well. And sometimes there's a slight difference, and sometimes the least able students gain most. For example, informative assessment type strategies, but usually it's about the same. But they look for that when they do the research. But that distance travel, that improvement in the learning, two identical groups being taught identically except for the note making, the only difference that can explain that improvement is the note making teaching methodology. Yes, it's the only difference between the two groups, and that improvement is called the effect size. It's the size of the effect of getting students to write their own notes. Most of us would be really impressed with that. And we think, oh, yeah, that's really good, But researchers say, oh, well, this is Leeds, this is hairdressing, how do we know this is going to work the same with a different subject, with academic level. So they repeat the experiment with slight differences. Some of the researchers will put a warning in, some of them not, that sort of thing. They repeat the experiment 100 times, 200,000 times, and then a research reviewer, some professor who's a real expert in this area, gets the job of looking at all of the research, filtering out all the poor research, so if there wasn't a control group, there wasn't a big enough sample, whatever, that research is removed from the review. They just use the high quality research, the very best research, and then they get an average for this effect size here. And it's stated in standard deviation for statistical reasons I can't bore you with. But if something's got an effect size of 1 standard deviation, that's very high actually, that's equivalent in teacher speak to about a 2-grade leap. Now if you imagine that this testing thing I was describing, you were going to grade students as A, B, C, D, E, and so on. A level is sort of way, or GCSE way, those are graded in that way. Then a single one standard deviation, which is actually what you get for note making. You get a 1 standard deviation effect size, which is a very big effect size. It's equivalent to a 2-grade leap. Now what that means is, I put Cynthia in this group. She does the little test, she gets a C. I grade A, B, C, D, E, F. She gets a C. Had I put her in this group, she would have got an A. That's the degree of improvement. Same teacher, yeah? But the teacher's been transformed from being a really good teacher with good results into an outstanding teacher by using an outstanding teacher. And in fact, any teacher can become an outstanding teacher. All it requires is nothing to do with personality, all it requires is that you learn to use outstanding teaching methods really effectively. I say all it requires, actually it's quite a challenge. It takes quite a long time to develop your use of the teaching method until you're really sort of milking it for everything that it can give you. It's a long old haul. And Dylan William, who involves schools in the development of their teaching in a very similar way to what I try to do, which is supported experiments, people are trying new stuff out. He says it takes 2 years for a teacher to get the maximum out of a teaching method. So there's a lot of learning here in the minutiae of exactly how and when not to use a teaching method. Now, here's a question for you. This is a real puzzle for you, isn't it? You've all got expertly written notes, and you do two grades worse than you look. Now, if we look at your notes, they are crap because you wrote them. Yeah? They're written in, they make your toes curl when you read them, because they don't use a problem with terminology, the right subject-specific terminology at all. Things aren't explained properly. They're written in sort of